They mocked my autistic son at the school assembly, until the governor shared his story. I never thought that the worst day of my son's life would become the moment that changed everything for children with autism in our entire state. My name is Sarah, and I'm the mother of Lucas, a brilliant 14-year-old boy who sees the world differently than most people. Lucas has autism, and for years, I've watched him struggle to fit into a world that doesn't always understand his unique gifts. That morning started like any other. Lucas was sitting at the kitchen table, meticulously arranging his cereal by color and size, a routine that brought him comfort and helped him start his day. He was excited because it was the day of the annual school assembly, where students would present their science projects to the entire school community, including parents and local dignitaries. Before I continue with this story that would forever change how our community views autism, if you believe that every child deserves to be understood and celebrated for their unique abilities, please like this video and subscribe to our channel for more inspiring stories about neurodiversity and acceptance. Lucas had been working on his project for months, a detailed analysis of local bird migration patterns that he had observed and documented with incredible precision. His attention to detail was extraordinary. He could tell you exactly which species of bird appeared on which day, at what time, and under what weather conditions. What others might see as obsessive behavior, I recognized as Lucas's superpower, his ability to notice patterns and details that others missed entirely. At school, however, things were different. Lucas struggled with social interactions, loud noises overwhelmed him, and sudden changes in routine could trigger what others mistakenly called meltdowns, but were actually his nervous system's way of coping with sensory overload. His classmates didn't understand why he rocked back and forth when he was thinking, why he avoided eye contact, or why he sometimes repeated phrases he had heard. The morning of the assembly, I could see Lucas was more anxious than usual. He kept checking his notes, arranging and rearranging his materials, and asking me repeatedly if I was sure his presentation was good enough. "Mom, what if they don't understand?" he asked, his voice trembling slightly. "What if they think I'm weird?" My heart broke every time he asked questions like this. Lucas had been dealing with subtle bullying and misunderstanding from his peers for years. Teachers often praised his intelligence but seemed frustrated by his need for routine and his difficulty with group activities. Some parents had even suggested that Lucas might be disruptive to other students' learning experiences. When we arrived at the school auditorium, I could feel the familiar knot in my stomach. The room was crowded and noisy, two things that always made Lucas uncomfortable. I watched as he pressed his hands over his ears and began his self-soothing rocking motion. Almost immediately, I heard whispers from other parents. "There's that boy again. Why can't he just sit still like the others? Maybe he shouldn't be in regular classes." The assembly began with the principal's welcome speech, followed by several student presentations. Lucas was scheduled to present in the middle of the program. I watched as each student before him gave their presentation with confidence, receiving applause and encouragement from the audience. When it was Lucas's turn, he walked to the podium with his carefully organized materials, his movements slightly stiff and deliberate. "Good morning, everyone," Lucas began, his voice barely above a whisper. "My name is Lucas, and I want to tell you about the birds." He had practiced this opening line hundreds of times, but standing in front of 300 people, his anxiety was clearly overwhelming him. His hands began to shake as he tried to set up his display board. That's when it started. A few students in the back began to snicker. One boy made flapping motions with his arms, mimicking Lucas's earlier hand movements. Another student loudly whispered, "Why is he talking so weird?" The cruel laughter began to spread through the student section, and I felt my blood run cold. Lucas noticed the reaction immediately. His face turned red, and he began to rock back and forth at the podium, a behavior that only made the mockery worse. Someone shouted, "Look at him go!" and the laughter grew louder. I started to stand up, ready to rush to my son's defense, but Lucas held up his hand. With a trembling voice, he said, "I know I'm different, but I want to show you something important." He began his presentation despite the ongoing snickers and whispers. Lucas spoke about his observations with such passion and detail that gradually, some of the audience began to listen. He explained how he had tracked 17 different species of birds over 6 months, noting their arrival and departure times, their feeding patterns, and their responses to weather changes. His data was meticulous, his charts were perfectly organized, and his conclusions were scientifically sound. But the mockery continued. A group of 8th graders started making bird sounds every time Lucas mentioned a new species. Parents began to shift uncomfortably in their seats, some looking embarrassed by their children's behavior, others seeming to silently agree with the ridicule. The teachers looked helpless, unsure how to control the situation without making it worse. Lucas pressed on, his voice growing stronger as he lost himself in his passion for the subject. He showed photographs he had taken, each one perfectly composed and timed. He displayed weather charts that corresponded to bird behavior patterns. He even played recordings of different bird calls that he had collected using specialized equipment he had saved up to buy with his own allowance money. Despite the incredible quality of his work, the disruption continued. I watched my son's confidence crumble with each cruel comment and every burst of laughter. His hands began to shake more violently, and I could see he was fighting back tears. The principal finally stood up and called for order, but the damage was done. Lucas had been humiliated in front of his entire school community. Just as Lucas was concluding his presentation, something unexpected happened. A man in the back of the auditorium stood up and began to walk toward the stage. He was tall, distinguished-looking, and wore a perfectly tailored suit. As he walked, conversations began to quiet down, and people started to take notice. I had no idea who he was, but clearly others did. The man approached the podium where Lucas was standing, still trembling from his ordeal. He gently placed his hand on Lucas's shoulder and said in a clear, authoritative voice, "Lucas, that was one of the most impressive scientific presentations I've ever heard. May I share something with everyone here?" The entire auditorium fell silent. Even the students who had been making noise moments before seemed to recognize that something important was happening. The man turned to face the audience, and I finally recognized him. It was Governor Robert Mitchell, who had been quietly sitting in the back row as part of his scheduled school visit. "My name is Robert Mitchell," he began, his voice carrying easily through the now silent auditorium. "I'm your governor, and I came here today to talk to you about education and opportunity. But Lucas has just taught me something far more valuable than anything I planned to discuss." The governor paused, looking directly at the students who had been mocking Lucas. "You see, what Lucas just shared with us isn't just a school project. It's the kind of detailed, systematic observation that professional ornithologists, bird scientists spend years trying to achieve. His data is so precise and his methodology so sound that it could be published in scientific journals." He continued, "But more importantly, Lucas has shown us something about perseverance and passion that we all need to learn. Despite facing ridicule and mockery, he continued to share his knowledge because he believed it was important. That's the kind of character we need more of in our world." The governor then shared something that stunned everyone in the room. "I want you all to know that Lucas reminds me of someone very important to me, my own son, David. David is also autistic, and like Lucas, he sees the world in ways that others don't always understand. When David was Lucas's age, he faced similar challenges and similar cruelty from people who didn't understand that being different isn't being less than." The auditorium was completely silent now. Parents who had been whispering about Lucas just minutes before looked shocked and ashamed. Students who had been laughing were now staring at their hands, suddenly understanding the weight of their actions. "My son David," the governor continued, "grew up to become one of the leading software engineers in the country. His ability to see patterns and details that others miss, the same ability that Lucas just demonstrated, made him invaluable to his field. The company he works for now develops technology that helps millions of people every day." Governor Mitchell looked directly at Lucas, who was still standing at the podium, tears streaming down his face. But now they were tears of relief and recognition rather than shame. "Lucas, your presentation today reminded me why we need to celebrate neurodiversity, not mock it. Your attention to detail, your systematic approach, and your passion for understanding the natural world are exactly the qualities we need in our scientists, our researchers, and our innovators. He then turned back to the audience. I want to tell you about something we're implementing in our state because of young people like Lucas and my son David. We're launching a new program called Neurodiversity in Schools that will train teachers to recognize and nurture the unique abilities of students with autism, ADHD, and other neurological differences. The governor's voice grew stronger and more passionate. We're going to stop treating these differences as disabilities and start recognizing them as the diverse strengths they actually are. We're going to create learning environments where students like Lucas can thrive, where their unique perspectives are valued, and where they're protected from the kind of cruelty we witnessed here today. He paused, looking directly at the students who had been disruptive earlier. And we're going to teach all students about empathy, acceptance, and the incredible contributions that neurodivergent individuals make to our society every single day. The governor then made an announcement that left everyone speechless. Lucas, I would like to invite you to present your bird migration research to the State Environmental Council next month. Your data could be crucial for our state's conservation efforts, and I believe professional ornithologists would be very interested in your findings. The transformation in the room was immediate and profound. Students who had been mocking Lucas just minutes before were now looking at him with new respect and curiosity. Parents who had been uncomfortable with his presence were now applauding enthusiastically. Teachers who had struggled to understand his needs were now seeing his potential in an entirely new light. But Governor Mitchell wasn't finished. He shared more about the challenges his own family had faced and how they had learned to see autism not as a limitation, but as a different way of experiencing and understanding the world. He talked about the increased sensory sensitivity that allows many autistic individuals to notice details others miss, the pattern recognition abilities that make them excellent at mathematics and science, and the honest, direct communication style that brings authenticity to relationships. Lucas, he said, your presentation today was more than just sharing information about birds. You showed us what happens when we give neurodivergent individuals the support and respect they deserve. You demonstrated that when we create inclusive environments, everyone benefits from the unique perspectives and abilities that autism brings. As the governor concluded his impromptu speech, something beautiful happened. The student who had been making the loudest disruptions earlier slowly stood up and walked to the front of the auditorium. With tears in his eyes, he approached Lucas and said, I'm sorry. I was wrong to make fun of you. Your presentation was amazing, and I'd like to learn more about birds if you'd be willing to teach me. One by one, other students began to approach Lucas, offering apologies and expressing genuine interest in his work. Parents who had been judgmental were now asking me questions about autism and how they could better support neurodivergent children in their community. Teachers were discussing how they could modify their teaching methods to accommodate different learning styles. The principal, clearly moved by what had transpired, announced that the school would be implementing new anti-bullying policies specifically designed to protect and support neurodivergent students. She also declared that Lucas's presentation would be submitted to the state science fair, where it would likely receive recognition for its scientific merit. As we left the auditorium that day, Lucas looked up at me with a smile I hadn't seen in years. Mom, he said, I think people finally understand that being different isn't being wrong. It's just being me. For the first time in his life, my son felt truly accepted and valued for who he was. The impact of that day extended far beyond our school. Governor Mitchell kept his word, and Lucas did present his research to the State Environmental Council, where it was praised for its thoroughness and accuracy. His work contributed to important conservation decisions that protected several critical bird habitats in our state. More importantly, the Neurodiversity in Schools program that the governor announced became a model for other states across the country. Teachers began receiving training on how to recognize and support the unique learning styles of neurodivergent students. Schools started creating sensory-friendly environments and implementing individualized learning plans that played to each student's strengths. Lucas's story became a catalyst for change in our entire educational system. He showed us that when we move beyond fear and ignorance about neurological differences, we discover incredible talents and perspectives that enrich our communities. His courage in continuing his presentation despite the mockery demonstrated the resilience and determination that so many neurodivergent individuals possess. Today, Lucas is thriving in high school, where he's part of a special program for gifted students in the sciences. He's been accepted into a summer internship program at the State University's biology department, where he'll work alongside professional researchers on migration pattern studies. More importantly, he's surrounded by friends and teachers who appreciate his unique way of seeing the world. The lesson of that day continues to resonate throughout our community. We learned that autism isn't something to be fixed or hidden, but rather a neurological difference that brings valuable perspectives and abilities to our society. We discovered that when we create inclusive environments where everyone is valued for their unique contributions, we all benefit from the rich diversity of human experience. Lucas's story reminds us that behind every child who seems different is a unique individual with their own gifts, challenges, and dreams. When we choose understanding over judgment, acceptance over exclusion, and celebration over mockery, we create a world where everyone can thrive and contribute their special talents to making our communities stronger and more compassionate. That Assembly Day taught us all that the things that make us different are often the very things that make us extraordinary. And sometimes, it takes the courage of one young person sharing their passion to change hearts, minds, and an entire state's approach to neurodiversity and inclusion.